You just get home and you see you've accidentally left the window open and you realize that's the one that doesn't have a screen in it. Now you frantically start searching all over the house for your cat. You realize she's gotten out. What do? You go around your neighborhood. You look all over the place. You go talk to your neighbors. You stop anybody walking down the street. Have you seen my cat? And nobody's seen your cat. So now you're worried sick, your heart's beating, and you're trying to figure out, what do I do? Now, for you guys that are pet owners out there, we've all probably been through this once or twice in our life because they all seem to get out every now and then. Well, now today in this episode, we've got an option for you. Bonnie Hale, a cat detective, tells us all about what she does, the things you can do to help find your cat. It's going to be a good one, so hang in there. We are supported by PrepVet, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at prepvet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
For real, 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 for real. Got a bunch of furry friends and I love them all the same. I'm an animal lover, veterinarian is the name. Let's share some pet stories from heartwarming to strange, losses and gains, from wacky to insane. For real. You're now tuned in to For Real with your host, Mark Kyle.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the For Real podcast. Today's going to be a fun one. I have a guest that you probably don't even know they exist, but when you find out they exist, you're going to probably have to use one at some point in your life. Bonnie Hale has been a pet detective for 17 years, and she's going to tell us how she got in it, what she does, how it works, all that other stuff. Bonnie, thanks so much for joining, and I can't wait to ask you questions and hear your story.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
So you've had quite the interesting life. How did you end up getting to be a pet detective? Were you a private eye before this?
No, I'm a private eye because of this. All my other careers, I get very interested in something. I get a lot of education. I enjoy that aspect. But when I've gotten actually into doing the work, I don't last very long because I get bored. So aviation, creative writing, the arts, teachings, doing psychotherapy with people, all of that I loved in the beginning, but it just wore thin when I discovered being a pet detective. I've never gotten that feeling like I can't do this for one more minute. It has never come up for me being a pet detective. So it's stuck.
Well, you know, it's funny. I mean, I'm one of those people too. I've never been diagnosed, but I'm sure I'm ADHD. I love doing stuff. I learn new stuff. Next thing I'm on to the next thing.
Right.
Here I am. I'm on to being a podcast guy now.
Yes.
But you know, I do find when I find whatever that niche is and it fits my personality, I stay. So that makes all the sense in the world. So let's talk about being a pet detective. I mean, I know you specialize in cats. Let's talk about why you specialize in cats. Let's delve into it however you want to go.
Okay.
If I try to interrupt you, I apologize. I have a tendency to do that. My kids tell me that all the time. So I apologize ahead of time.
Okay. Well, I'll kind of start at the beginning. I am a huge dog person. I have loved dogs and trained dogs all my life, starting with a little trophy I won with my little West Highland White Terrier when I was 8 years old in a 4-H dog training competition.
Wow.
She made me look really good, and I liked that. And so I've been training dogs all my life. In my late 30s, I got involved in dog agility, you know, the obstacle course where you train the dog to go through the tire swing, the teeter-totter, the ladder, all those things that they do on the obstacle course, very fast and furious. And it is a lot of fun. That's where I really learned high-level dog training, more than just the sit, stay, lay down kind of obedience training. And I found that I was really pretty good at it. So while I was doing that, I got home from work one day. I was working as a faux finish painter. I was doing murals in people's houses.
Wow.
And teaching college English at the same time. And I saw on the news that a couple, I lived in St. Louis at this point in my life, a couple from Michigan that was vacationing in St. Louis had their car stolen not far from my house. was a little touristy, cute little touristy area where everyone would go to see the sights. And their car was stolen from there. And in the car was their little dog, Maddie, a little white mixed breed dog who was in a crate, but the whole car was stolen.
The whole car.
The whole car.
Oh, by the way, as a side note too, I was born in St. Louis.
Oh, you were? Oh, okay. What high school did you go to? Just kidding.
No, I moved away when I was 8, but my mom is still out just outside of St. Louis in Warrenton, which is going west. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. We lived in Clayton.
Yeah, I know Clayton.
Yeah. So this, I turn on the evening news, and there's this little segment on this couple who is offering a $20,000 reward for their little mixed breed dog. And these were not wealthy people. And in fact, they didn't even have a cell phone at the time. This is 2006, I guess. I'd gone into some tourist trap, and when they came out, their whole car was gone. And so all their stuff was in the car, including a handgun. So it created a double jeopardy situation for whoever stole their car had also stolen a firearm. Or not double jeopardy, but third strike. It was going to be a third strike for this guy who was caught with the car. So if they could prove that he also stole it and had possession of the gun, he was going to go away for life. So they were going to cash in one of their CDs, and they offered this giant reward in hopes that somebody would rat out whoever actually did this.
Mm-hmm.
So it got on the TV news, and that's the only reason I knew about it. So a couple of us, different people, little do-gooders, I guess you'd say we were, called the owners of this dog and said, well, we don't have your dog, but we want to help you. We live here. We don't like that this is happening to you. And that's how I got involved. I had never lost a dog for more than a few days. I fortunately, knock on wood, still have not ever permanently lost a dog in that way, but I could certainly imagine it, how bad it would be, that sinking feeling of your dog has no voice, no way to ask for help. They don't know where to go. They don't know what they're doing. They're probably going to get run over, all those thoughts. So I reached out to these people, and some other gals had reached out to these people, and we formed a little posse of women trying to help these people find their dog. And in the course of that, we did a lot of things wrong, but we did get exposed to a woman who brought her tracking dog up from Alabama, who was trained as a pet detective, to try to track this dog. And I know now that we had so much against us. That's a case I wouldn't have taken. When it's already 2 or 3 weeks old, the scent trail,
Right.
I don't believe is viable. I don't believe it was viable then. I don't think her dog was ever on trail. But in any event, it really captured my imagination. And I was running along behind this woman and her tracking dog and thinking, oh, I want to do this. And I had done the math on how much she charged and how much compared to how much I was making at the time.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, she makes about exactly what I make, and she's having a lot of fun with her dog. So I just right then decided that I wanted to investigate the possibility of at least helping people, if not making a career of it. And that's when I got involved with Missing Pet Partnership, which at the time was also a huge source on the brand new thing called the internet. For most of us, the internet had just been born. And so they were a presence on the internet and taught us, this little group of women, taught us some very valuable techniques that I use to this day.
Real quickly, so for you guys listening out there, Missing Pet Partnership is an organization helping people become, I guess, pet detectives?
It was at the time. They no longer train pet detectives. Now that's another group.
Right.
At the time, they did train pet detectives. That's right.
Okay.
As soon as I could get a hold of the founder of Missing Pet Partnership, who's a woman called Kat Albrecht, a former police dog handler.
Cat
with a K.
Okay, just, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know. She signs her emails cat and dogs.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's just cute. And she's a cat owner and a dog owner, and she had been a police dog handler, using dogs to find contraband, to track down bad guys, to look for missing persons. So she knew the drill on using the dog's nose to accomplish this goal of finding something that's missing. And she decided to apply it to dogs and cats and whatever other pets people might lose. So she's a lovely person. She's still working hard in the industry, these 20 something years that I know of for sure. So I reached out to her and found out that she was doing a training, in-person training. At the time we did in-person trainings. Now a lot of it's online, which I don't think is as effective, but okay. I guess they can reach people.
I don't think it would be effective, especially when you got a dog. You want to be able to see how they react. I guess you can look at a screen.
They use GoPros.
Oh,
So instead of having Kat herself over my shoulder while I'm running my dog on a trail, I have a GoPro on my forehead, and that's recording everything that my dog is doing.
oh, that's wild.
Then she and I could sit down later, watch the GoPro together, in separate states. And I guess this is how they're doing it now. But I got trained in person, and as part of I was strictly there for dogs. I did not have a heart for cats. I thought they were fine. I'm not a cat hater, but I wasn't interested in helping them. But this one particular day of the training, the choices involved either cats or boats. And I am a boat hater. And so I was,
Really?
Yeah, they were going to do deep water remains recovery.
Oh, yeah.
Humans that go overboard and they end up in the lake and they need to recover the body. They use dogs because those tiny gases come up through the water and the dog can alert to where we need to dive to get to the body. So they do that for pets too, but I just don't do boats. So I said, oh, I guess I'll do the cats. And my dog that I was running at the time, who's a beautiful purebred Australian Shepherd that I'd gotten out of a shelter. He was a lovely dog. He took the cat test and passed with flying colors.
Wow.
So I thought, oh, okay. And by the end of that training, it was really only a very intensive week-long training. We were ready to go home and help people find cats because it's a different type of scent work than tracking.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
So explain that to me a little bit.
Okay. Well, so I have to explain this at least 2 or 3 times a day to clients because everybody is expecting what they've seen in the movies, in Cool Hand.
Right, exactly.
When the prisoner escapes from the prison and he's on foot and we get out there with the bloodhound the very next day, if not sooner, 2 hours maybe. We know he's missing and we get out there with the bloodhound and the bloodhound sniffs the pillowcase and off he goes across the field, which is pristine. No humans have run across that field in 10 years, probably. So it's like a perfect scent field to follow that scent that's on the ground that is left by the prisoner. That's most of us. That's our experience with.
Well, me too. When you were talking earlier, I was thinking about Cool Hand Luke.
Exactly.
They do this. They put the pepper or something so the dog can't find him.
Yeah. So he does something to distract the dog and make the dog not work properly. So that's called tracking or ground scent work.
Okay.
And it can be very effective in the short term, in my opinion. Like when you get out there when the guy's only been missing for 2 hours or a day, maybe. Beyond that, I just don't find it all that effective for tracking pets. I did it for a long time, but the problem is that's really hard to catch up.
Right, gotcha.
If one one train leaves the train station at 6 a.m. and the second train leaves it at 6:20, and they're going the same speed, or the second train's even going a little slower, right? Is the second train ever going to catch the first train?
No, you're always 20 minutes or 30 minutes behind.
20, 30, 40, an hour
Right, all right.
behind. So that's kind of what tracking looks like. And the other word that we use sometimes interchangeably, but they're not exactly the same thing, is trailing. So both of those are following the scent that got left on the ground. And that scent that got left on the ground is very fragile. It doesn't last forever. It can be rendered non-viable by heat or time or heavy, heavy rains or strong, strong wind or the yard guys coming through with their mowers and blowers. It's so delicate, a blower just destroys it. Just blows it to kingdom come.
Right.
So it's not that effective for what we do in a normal, real environment. In some places it is. Some places it's great. But in, a normal suburban area where everybody's getting their lawn mowed at least once a week and everybody on different days, how do you know where there's going to be holes in the scent trail? It's just really, it was very frustrating to try to track these animals. But the other kind of scent work is air scent. So that's what most people are actually far more familiar with, is stuff they've seen in the real world, where like the military dogs go out into the minefield and they can smell the bombs. They
Right.
can smell the buried mines, right? And they will sit and alert their team, by going out there and stopping before they get to the bomb, right? Or cancer detection dogs, or
COVID.
avalanche dogs, COVID dogs. Do they have that now?
Oh, yeah, they were working on that during the whole deal, versus checking to see if people had COVID versus checking see if they got their shot or not, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't hear that one.
Yeah.
I've heard they're using them to diagnose Parkinson's,
Oh, that's amazing.
because there really hasn't been a definitive, clinical test for Parkinson's. And they're doing extremely well at it. So those are air scent dogs. You have an avalanche come down, the skiers get buried.
Mhm.
We can't see them, but the dogs can move over the snow and tell us where they are detecting human scent coming up through the snow.
A little tidbit on that too. I've reached out to a group that I may be doing a podcast with, but the research I've done, they can find a body 4 times faster than a human can.
Yep. Does not surprise me one bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really effective used that way. So, and it doesn't really matter if the avalanche happened an hour ago or 10 days ago. The person may be deceased by the time we get to them, but we can still find them
Right.
using dogs this way, where the scent trail, in my opinion, just gets ruined so quickly. So anyway, I was in it for dogs, but my dog was in it for cats. He was so excited. If you think about it, you need a dog who's extremely interested in cats, who has a real drive for cats, but doesn't want to kill them, doesn't really even want to chase them very much. A lot of dogs are cat chasers just because they are small prey. They can be
Right.
prey. And when they move fast, it energizes the dog's prey drive. And so the dog just out of instinct moves in their direction. But he just was super interested, and all he wanted to do was lick and sniff this cat that they had for the training, who was a very sniffable, lickable cat. Not all cats are going to play this game, right?
Most. Most aren't.
His name was Cheeto, and he's gone to the other side now. But and we all were sad when that happened, because he helped so many dogs be able to express this deep interest in cats and get rewarded for it. So when you expose the dog to a cat and he's looking at the cat, and I'm saying, "That's a kitty. That's a kitty. That's a kitty. What do you think? Where's the kitty?" And if he turns and looks at the cat, at that point, click, you reward him.
Oh.
And so he starts to associate the smell of a cat with the word kitty, and then the taste of chicken. If that's what you're...
Because you're getting a treat, yeah.
Yes. So you use very high value rewards. And with some dogs, it's not a food reward. It's a toy. It might be a ball or a tug toy or frisbee or whatever they love. For some dogs, it's praise. Frankly, I've never had a dog who would work that hard for praise. I've had all dogs who work for food. My current dog, I thought she might be a great toy drive dog, where she would be motivated to get her toy because she's a complete ballaholic. And then I wouldn't have to carry food with me everywhere I go to work. I could just have one tennis ball or a tug toy or something, but she gets too distracted by knowing that ball is even in my pocket. So she's also a food drive dog. I give her a food reward for finding the cat. So we did dogs. I searched for so many dogs, and we helped a lot of people get them home, because as any pet detective worth their salt will tell you, it's not all about the scent work. There's a lot of other aspects to this that are more of the human variety, and obviously, like, you're posting online, but not as obvious is a technique that Missing Animal Response Network and Missing Pet Partnership both really promote, is these large neon signs that need to go up. because of that problem of not being able to catch up to the dogs.
Well, one of the things I read too is even when you're looking for, and I know we'll get into why it's easier or better to use it for cats and dogs, but one of the things I would think based on what I read is if you're going in a direction, at least you know where to put up the posters and you need to know where to go to do your search party too. That would be one of the things, right?
Right. I used to tell people that a lot when I was working on dog cases with my search dogs is all I can guarantee you is what happened for the first, say, 2 to 4 hours that your dog was gone. Because that's how long my search dogs have always worked. And I think that's fairly common. Some pet detectives will have multiple dogs and they'll switch them out. And the handler will do several dogs in a row. But I was always, one woman show, one dog at a time. We'd go as long as my dog could go. And that's all I can guarantee you what happened. And if your dog's been missing for 4 days, all kinds of things could have happened in the other, 76 hours or whatever your dog's been missing. So people need to keep in mind and not get tunnel vision about what happens on the search, because just because we were heading north when we cut it off does not mean that your dog kept going north.
Right.
Your dog could have turned any direction, any of the other, 359 points of the compass other than the one that we were on. So like the big posters, you start in the direction that the search dog was going, but then you have to remember that the dog could have turned, and they almost always do. Or what is another huge problem with dogs that we don't have as much with cats is human intervention. So like me, like you probably, Mark, you're driving down the road, you see a cat, you go, oh, a cat. That's like the extent of your interest. You might not even really register it because you figure he's okay.
Right.
And plus, if you go try to help him, he's a cat,
Yeah.
right? He's not going to just like say, oh, I'm so happy to see you, like a dog would, right? But with dogs, we pull over and we intervene. And so at least, I don't know, probably 70 to 80% of the time, when I would be tracking a dog, we would just come to a grinding halt. No more scent, no dog.
Somebody pick up the dog and took him home.
Yeah, somebody picked him up and they either took him home or they took him to sell him, if it's a valuable dog, or they took him to a rescue where they know somebody who does dog rescue, or they drive him to Oklahoma because they have a friend there who does dog rescue for this type of breed or whatever. So frequently you're not trying to actually figure out where did the dog go. You're trying to figure out where the person went who took the dog. So all of that kind of leads into why I eventually stopped running after dogs and started exclusively working on cats. Yeah. So it's been I could make a lot more money if I did dogs too. But I was also kind of getting to that point in life where you're thinking about sort of winding it down into retirement. I'm not ready to retire yet, but those dog searches can be very rigorous, 7 to 10 miles. And you're behind a big tracking dog on a leash. And I'm a little tiny woman. And my coonhound was so strong, and my back and my knees and my feet were really starting to suffer from just hanging on,
Sure.
with this big dog pulling you. So doing cat searches is not as physically rigorous. It's usually not as dangerous. Although yesterday I found myself in a pasture with a bunch of bulls trying to find this little cat that escaped from this owner's arms as he was being carried into the veterinary hospital nearby. It's typically not as dangerous, not as much likelihood of running into snakes and wild hogs and donkeys. Donkeys are dangerous. So yeah, it was a pretty easy decision, and I really don't regret it a lot. I still help people with their dog cases if they're willing to just do a phone consultation with me, which is a much lower price point than me actually going in person to help them. Not that many people think I have all that much to offer that they haven't already thought of. So not that many people take me up on it, but the ones who do, they often have really good success. There's There's a story in the Dallas Morning News, if you subscribe to that, that you can read about a couple that had a lost dog 2 Christmases ago. It was during the worst of COVID. And it ended up in the Dallas Morning News as kind of a feel-good COVID story because there weren't very
Yeah, we needed them.
we needed them. They had hired they called me first because I have I think a very broad online presence. I've had a lot of interviews, a lot of newspapers, magazines. So people gravitate toward me, and I told them I don't do dog searches anymore in person, but I can do this consultation. And they are like, no, we need the search dog. So I sent them to these other 2 pet detectives, and they ended up hiring them both on separate days to try to track their dog. And neither of them found the dog.
Well, I would also think if I was doing it, it sounds to me that the chances of success with a dog, since they're runners basically,
Right.
is a lot less than finding a cat. So, from a rewarding standpoint, it's really disappointing if you can't try, you've got people that are
Absolutely.
desperate trying to find their pet, their loved one, and you can't find it. That's got to be heart-wrenching for yourself as well as them.
It is. And this has been a really long, hot, icky summer of finding either nothing or finding them deceased.
Yeah.
And today I had really high hopes for the cat we were searching for because she's an indoor-only cat and very likely to hide. And they hide really close by. And sometimes I find them in 5 minutes, sometimes 20.
Wow.
but it's finding indoor-only cats can be the most rewarding activity I get involved in. Indoor-outdoor cats, not so much because they get into trouble. But anyway, this couple, they did the phone consultation with me after tracking with these other 2 gals, and they used my advice and they got their dog back within 2 hours.
Wow.
So that was, ooh, there's your dog.
Guys, well, my dog found my house. Yeah, as you can tell. Oh, man. She's a hound, too.
I could tell.
Well, I always bring her I always mention her a lot, well, not all the time. So I mention her lots of times in my podcast, but she decided to mention herself this time, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyways, so, one of the things I read is, so the main group right now, and I say main group, at least from my research I've done, is that MAR, which is missing animal response.
Mm-hmm.
What's amazing to me, at least what I said, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, what they're saying is wrong, but they're saying there's really only about 36 pet detectives that are registered in the United States.
I think that's probably right. And there's, for every one of us who's a real pet detective, there's about 30 scammers.
Right. Well, like everything.
Huge problem.
One of the things I also read too was lots of times an animal go to a vet clinic and somehow the animal gets lost and they can't find them. Have you ever been hired by like a vet clinic or something like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Back in the day when I first started, if the vet lost your dog or cat, you were on your own. And you had to take the initiative to go find them or hire a pet detective. They wouldn't help you at all. But in these days of Google reviews and Yelp reviews and just the Nextdoor network, business owners can't afford to let that happen without doing their absolute best. And often that will involve hiring a pet detective. So, yeah, I've probably worked 3 or 4 dozen cases where they were lost at the vet. Either the vet technicians made a mistake or somehow their safety procedures failed, or the owner lost it themselves. Like the one yesterday was this guy was carrying.
They get scared or something, they take off.
Yeah, they get scared and take off. Yeah. So it's not uncommon at all.
First of all, vet losing a pet, that happens. I mean, it haven't been back in the back end of a vet clinic. It's crazy down there. It's chaos lots of times.
Yeah, the animals are scared.
Yeah, but here's my deal. If you got a vet, forget Yelp and that, if you got a vet that's not going to help you find your pet that they lost, you probably should get a different vet as far as I'm concerned.
Well, people, that used to be how it was. They would lose one customer over this. Now they're going to lose 100.
Yeah.
If they don't, if their name gets out there in a bad way, they're going to lose a lot more than one client. So they now do. And sometimes, they'll call me and I'll hear the case and I'll say, man, it is so unlikely we're going to be able to find this one. They're like, it doesn't matter. We just have to do this,
Right.
We just have to do it for our client. And what I hear that's what they say. What I hear is we can't afford to not do this. We need to put our best foot forward in every possible way or we're going to get nailed online.
I'm interviewing a few like pet walkers and pet sitters, and this makes me think if my daughter or my son, I have two daughters and a son, if they'd gone and pet sit for some friends of mine and they lost that thing, I'd hire a pet detective. I'd feel horrible for them.
Right.
That's exactly what I do.
People do. I've been hired by pet sitters. I've been hired by pet sitters who are hoping I'll find the pet before they have to tell the owner that they lost it.
Exactly. That's what I'd be doing.
And I'm like, no, 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 I will not take the case unless you tell the owner that the pet is missing. And when I personally find a dog, like just in my daily life, if I find a dog and it's a pet sitter, I'll hold the dog until the owner comes to get it.
Oh,
Because I don't think the pet sitter should get away with this, you know?
oh no, they shouldn't. I mean, things happen, but when I first found about this, and of course reached out to you, and you start doing all the research, you don't think about all the other things how a pet could be lost. Boarding kennels, you pay to have your
Yep.
dog there, and they get gone, or your cat, or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, there's so many different ways you could lose it. That I mean, you're pretty busy, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the impetus to change, from dogs and cats to just cats. I needed a day off, Mark, because I mean, really, once the word got out, and thank you, internet, thank you, Facebook business pages, for allowing me to reach enough people that I can earn a living as a pet detective. Because 25 years ago, how could you possibly have advertised in enough yellow pages, to have the kind of clientele that I have? And I frequently have to turn people away because there's only one of me, and I'll think, oh,
Right.
maybe I do need an employee and another dog. And then we'll have some, like recently, a 10-day hiatus with nothing. We had nothing. So I can't afford to be paying an employee for 10 days doing nothing.
Right. Do you remember that show on TV? It used to be "What's Your Occupation?" or "What's Your Job?" and you had to guess.
Yeah.
What was that? That yours would have been perfect. They would have never guessed.
Was it What's My Line? Was that?
What's my line? That was it. Yeah. Hey, the other thing I read too is that some of the pet insurance companies actually pay for this.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I read that some will pay for it, and for you listeners out there, it's something just to look into. And if your pet insurance doesn't cover it, you can get a rider that'll cover it. Yeah, I mean, I've just
Good to know.
yeah, you should put that under your stuff. See, I'm your advertiser now.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, they're one of the big dog walking companies who shall remain nameless, but they lose dogs every year. It's one of the ones where there's the app and you hire the person and they
Yeah.
might come and do a meet and greet, but then they come to your house and walk your dog while you're at work or on vacation, and they lose a bunch of dogs every year. They wanted me to be their on-call detective. And not just their spokesperson, but like they wanted me to do all their searches for like half of what I normally charge.
Yeah, well, that doesn't make sense.
No, thank you. I'm going to get that case anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think they did. I said, what I would be willing to do is help you come up with a protocol for safety, because so many of these, and I dare say all of them, almost all of them, could be avoided if people really followed the rules. If you make the rules and then require your people to follow them, a lot of these things aren't going to happen, because you just don't know how often I'm sitting there on the phone rolling my eyes at the mistakes that had to happen in the human world for this dog or cat to be missing. And it's just so avoidable.
Well, I've told you the story, but I'm going to tell the story for the listeners out there. So my parents, this is the one that was avoidable, by the way. My parents are down in San Diego, right by the border of Mexico, and we had a German Shepherd growing up. And whatever reason, I think my parents stopped to get a hamburger like McDonald's or something, and they left a window open for the dog. The dog jumped out, went into Mexico, crossed the border, she versus the other way, she went into Mexico. And my parents went down in all these really poor neighborhoods in Mexico for weeks, putting posters out, and they eventually got that dog back. I don't know how that ever happened, but they did it forever. But they left a window open too far down.
Yep.
The dog jumped out and crossed the border.
Yeah, that's a crazy story, because I can picture that. I can picture the language barrier. I can picture, where are we? What is, and from the dog's perspective, what a nightmare.
Well, talk about language barrier. My parents they probably didn't even know how to say "see." I mean, we're down there. I think I was away at college at the time, but that was one of those crazy stories that happened to my family all the time. So I got another question for you.
Uh-huh.
Disaster relief, where it really hits home right now. I'm actually talking to a couple
Mhm.
groups in Maui right now about being on the show. And there's all these animals that have been displaced by disaster. Have you ever had to do anything like that with it?
Well, Hurricane Katrina was a big inspiration to me when I saw how many pets were displaced during that disaster. It was catastrophic for the animal population of the New Orleans area. A lot of new groups and new ideas formed at that time around helping pets get home. So I wasn't involved in that one, but it really got me where I live, in the pet department. But around here, where I live in Texas, we've had a few tornadoes that have created a situation where it would have been really nice if I could have gotten in early with my dogs
Mm-hmm.
to help people. And I offered to do free searches for cats. This was just for cats when this happened in Fort Worth. But unfortunately, we were never allowed in early enough to make a difference. I would advise people by phone, and I can remember some of the funny stories when I would explain to people how cats act when they're terrified. This is what cats do when they're terrified. Please don't assume that your cat ran away. Your cat is hiding.
Mm-hmm.
I go pound this into their brain. And then when they were allowed to go into the house at some point, because these disaster areas, they block them off. Nobody gets to go in for a while. Only emergency workers were concerned with human life at this point and sealing off the, electrical things, the gas leaks, the water leaks, all that stuff has to come first, saving human lives. I get it. And then they'll think about the pets. But as soon as the owners can get back into their property, they would find many of these cats if they just followed the directions. And most of them were right there hiding in what was left of their home. The cats were found. The only ones I've personally worked on the ground, have been bad fire situations when people's homes have burned.
Mm.
And those are really sad and really hard on me, particularly because I had a house fire once where my two dogs were in the house when it happened. Fortunately, they did not perish, but it was one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me. And the aftermath of knowing how they could have died in that, I still get all cringy over it. I've probably worked, I don't know, a dozen or so cases where fire swept through the building and animals were lost, and particularly cats who
Right.
don't run, they hide. The difference between dogs and cats is dogs run, cats hide. And finding, their charred remains or just ash, these people they'll send me pictures, of the disaster. And I look at it like nothing but that's not metal could have survived that. I can see the springs from their sofa. So that's all that's left of the sofa. What are the chances that there's going to be enough of the cat to, it's really heartbreaking. And there's a phenomenon that I really wish didn't happen, which is that neighbors and firefighters will tell the victims of the fire, the homeowners or occupants, that they saw the cat get out because they think that will make the people feel better.
Oh man.
And I guess it does, maybe for
Temporarily.
but then convincing them that didn't happen so that they can go ahead and have closure about this. Because I used to think that closure was kind of a dumb word. It's like, oh, closure, schmosure. I didn't really think it was all that important until I started finding bodies for people or finding that tiny bit of fur that gets left over when a pet gets taken by a coyote. People are expecting there to be a big mess, like a big carcass and bones and blood and everything all over the place. And it just doesn't look like that. There's very little left. But when I've been able to give that to people, it makes a strong difference for them, because this not knowing is the really painful part of losing your pet or your kid or, anybody who's important to you. That not knowing, the bouncing between Despair and hope. Despair and hope. That's a big jump, and it feels like agony inside your body when it's happening, and you can't imagine it ever stopping. And for some people, it doesn't ever stop until they get closure.
Well, I think closure is important because you can't let go unless you know.
Right. Right.
It's funny. I mean, not funny at all, actually. A friend of mine here in Austin, she had this is in the last week, she had traveled to Italy, and her ranch that she had in town caught fire, and her dog of many years got
Mm.
succumbed by the fire. And she found out she just left like a day before. It was a big thing in the news here. And, I feel so bad. I've reached out to her, but, she's posting pictures on social media. Her dog's named Buddy. And, it's just a horrible, I just can't imagine what that'd be like.
No, and I think that in their effort to make people, help their friend or their client escape that horror of knowing. And the horror of knowing is bad. I mean, it's bad. Knowing that your pet burned up or something is bad. But the horror of the ongoing not knowing turns out to be worse. And so that's what people and firefighters, neighbors and firefighters are creating, is this opportunity for the person to just suffer endlessly because they don't know what happened. They'll go back and forth between that feeling of, my pet burned versus my pet is still out there needing help, or might come home. They're bouncing back and forth and they don't know how to feel. And it's excruciating is what I've really seen.
So I've got a little bit better uplifting story just to let this go a little bit.
Okay.
So talking about Katrina, I do, for your listeners out there, I've mentioned every now and then, I do a lot of refugee work in conflict zones, but I was actually in Katrina. I snuck down to Katrina. I always say I would be a great criminal if I wasn't harming anybody. So when Katrina happened, I just was falling and I just knew I needed to do something. So I had a friend of mine whose wife had an embroidery business. I ended up talking to a friend to go with me, and I had 2 shirts made for him and I that said, with a Red Cross symbol on it, it said emergency blood product delivery. And I decided we were going to go down there and help people. So I rented a U-Haul, filled it with water because I knew, New Orleans is always hot, and filled it with water, toilet paper, and candy for kids. And so, I'm thinking, okay, this will be good stuff. So we actually drove down, and I think the flood was like on the hurricane, but the town got flooded around like on a Monday, and I got there like Thursday.
Wow.
A lot of the road was closed. We ended up having to go back. I followed with actually a troop hauler, picked up this guy who had gotten out of a hospital, and I'm pretty sure he must have been in a mental ward because he was crazy.
Right.
But he showed us how to get in the back way, in the back bridge where you came to town, kind of right along the water. And the emergency group the MES came up to us and said, "Hey, can you help us? We got to evacuate everybody to the helicopter. They're all there's a convention center right along the river." So we literally evacuated probably 5,000 people, taking them to the helicopters, which were on the far end of this thing.
Yeah.
Driving, it was insane. But the story is what's relative to what we're talking about. There was a guy, and I would get out and make sure families stayed together because it was just it was a cluster. And I would say, no, they've got to be together. So I had this one guy who had his dog with him, and he's one of those guys that the Fish and Game had got out of his house, and he was on the roof with his dog.
Right.
So they took him, and they wouldn't let him get on the helicopter with his dog. And he said, "Well, I'm not leaving my dog." So he comes to me and says, "I'm not leaving my dog." I said, "Well, we're driving up to Lafayette. We're in a U-Haul. There's not room inside. If you want to get in the back of the U-Haul, you can sit back there." I said, "It's not going to be the best ride." He said, No, that would be great. I've got family up actually in Baton Rouge. I got family in Baton Rouge. So we leave the town, and I have a gazillion stories about it, but I've got this guy in the back of my U-Haul. I got my fake emergency blood delivery shirt on, and we go to the airport there for some reason. I can't remember why. And he gets out and he starts crying. And he says, "Mark, God put you on this earth to save people, and you just saved me and my dog." It was one of the best feelings I've ever had.
Aww.
I felt horrible. He's in the back of the thing, but he wasn't going to leave his dog.
Right.
And, and I'm sure there were so many people that actually lost their animals in that thing. But That was one of those good ones.
That experience of all of us watching those pets and their people suffer by the
Oh, yeah.
separation or the desire to not be separated has really changed things in this country, when a disaster happens. But they're still not willing to let me and my dog in until they've got everything else secured.
I'll tell you, all I got to do is get a shirt for you. I know how to do it.
I know. I just need my emergency blood product
Yeah,
shirt.
exactly.
What was I thinking?
I can tell you I can say how to be a criminal. It's easy. Okay, one last thing, because I know we're kind of winding down a little bit. So I read, where pet detectives are growing in not the U.S. and a country is growing big is mainland China.
What, really?
Yeah, because all the wealthy people have their pets, and I guess it's a huge growing industry in mainland China.
Well, no kidding. Well, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, so work on your Cantonese and whatever other dialect you can learn for China, and you'll be ready to go.
Well, right now I'm trying to find some young enterprising woman who wants to work with me, who lives near me, who just wants to buy my business when I retire. And I need to teach her how to be me because I feel I cannot retire when there's nobody to replace me. So,
well, you're up in the Dallas area. Where exactly are you?
I live in Grapevine.
Grapevine. Okay. So let's actually put some stuff out there. So for people that want to get a hold of you, let's give them the information. And I'll be putting some of this stuff on social media for everybody that's listening. But if they want to get a hold of you, your website or whatever else you have, let's put it out there.
Okay. My website is lostpetspecialist.com. One pet, one specialist, no plurals in there, lostpetspecialist.com. And my business Facebook page might be a little bit easier for some people, Texas Pet Detectives Association. That's plural, Texas Pet Detectives Association. And if you just Google Bonnie Pet Detective Texas, you will find me. People have found me just that way many times. Usually it'll bring up the business Facebook page. I am perfectly willing to give out my phone number. You might want to put that on your website. It's 314-369-2784. It is a St. Louis number still, but I'm local here in Grapevine, Texas. And I don't mind having my phone number. It's already all over the internet. So what's 10,000 more times? It's
exactly.
fine.
No, and by the way, I think that's important. I mean, a lot of people that they're children, and if they need help, they need to figure out how they can find help. And you mainly cover though pretty much down to. Do you go to San Antonio?
I do.
Okay.
I go to Houston and San Antonio. I go to Shreveport. I don't really go to New Orleans anymore. It's really too long of a drive for me. Anything I could drive to, I go to Oklahoma City frequently, Tulsa frequently. I don't go way South Texas. I've been to Corpus twice. That's a bit far for me too, but sometimes I do it.
Cool. Okay. Well, first off, thanks for coming in, but I've got to do my thing that I do, my little thing that I do, my gimmick thing every day. So for all you guys listening out, here's my joke. I'm going to give you that joke, but more importantly, before I give the joke, if you've got jokes, I really want you to send them in to my email, which is mkyle@forrealpodcast.com. If you got a joke and we like it, we'll record it. It doesn't have to be you. It can be your children. It can be your relative. You can be on the show. If you've got some great ideas for the show, you've got a story you want to tell, let us know. I mean, the more you share it to us, the more we get it out here. I mean, this is a great one for you guys to help out. So here's our joke. And I'm going to ask this to you, Bonnie. So why do dogs make bad dance partners?
I can't imagine, Mark. Why do they?
They've got 2 left feet.
Gosh, I kind of felt that one. I kind of felt it, but I was afraid to say it. But
No. It's a pretty good one. I mean, I know they're all pretty silly, but I love telling them. But anyways, I really, really appreciate this. I find it just fascinating what you're doing. I think it's a service that many, many people didn't even know that's available to them. So now they know it is. But Bonnie, thanks for being on the show. It means a lot to me that you took the time, and I really enjoyed talking to you.
My pleasure, Mark. It was fun. Thanks. Good luck on your projects.
Oh, thanks a lot. And for everybody out there listening, again, keep listening, follow us, tell your friends. The more followers you have, the more interesting things happen. And I really appreciate all of you. For real. And have a great day. Bye-bye now.
For real, 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 for real.
We're supported by Let's Walk. that's here to love your animals like our own.
Austin, Houston, and Denver, Let's Walk is here to love your animals like our own. From daily walks, play, in-house sleepovers, and more. Go to work, out on the town, or take a vacation knowing your pets are in the best hands. This woman-owned small business does it all. Check us out on Instagram at Let's Walk Austin, Houston, and Denver.
That concludes this episode of For Real with your host, Mark Kyle. For previous and future episodes of For Real, listen via all major podcast streaming sites.